What's happening? It's JD here. So I'm going to go on a slight rant right now about my Fender 60s Vintera Road Worn strat. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people that don't like road worns. I got into them because, as you know from my other videos, I have a Joe Strummer Telecaster that I love. And again, I've always thought the relic stuff looked cool. Like obsessed about Fender Custom Shop and everything else, but a lot of that stuff is way too expensive and quite frankly kind of silly and overdone. I actually purchased the Strummer one because at the time I had this carving guitar that had a ton of like lacquer on the back of the neck and probably could have just sanded it off, but I don't know, I got that particular telly in my hands and it felt amazing. And so ever since then, I was kind of chasing the same thing in a Strat. I'll tell you that the Vintera Strats are not bad. There's nothing wrong with them, but it's not even in the same universe as the fretwork and the feel of the neck on the Joe Strummer Telecaster. Granted, one's a telly, one is a Strat, but both have C-shaped necks from the 60s. And tall vintage frets, 7 1/4 radius, so they should feel similar, and they do. But I'll just tell you that the fretwork and all that kind of stuff going on these days versus, I don't know, what is it, about 10 years ago that the Joe Strummer Telecaster was a thing, are different. But anyway, I'm rambling. So my other frustration about and the Joe Strummer was the same way, about what's going on in like the $1,000 to $1,200 price range for guitars right now is you don't get brand name tuners. Sometimes you get the Fender branded ones, the Penguins, which are not bad. So if you get like a regular Strat, I think they come with the, every once in a while you find one with the locking tuners, and that's great. But you know, the Kluson Style tuners that are going on like the Road Worns, and some of the other like more vintage looking series Strats and Tellys and Jaguars are terrible. Like they're flat out horrible tuners. The shafts are all wobbly and everything else. So what I'm going to do today is, and I'm a little nervous about doing this because I am going to have to ream the peg head. I went back and forth with different conversion bushings and stuff because, and I don't have my notes in front of me, so you'll have to excuse me, but I think the Fender no-name brand ones, the shafts, the bushings are, it's like a 9mm hole, if I'm not mistaken. And then when you get into the Kluson actual branded style, vintage style tuners for like 6-in-line for a Stratotelli, their bushing, the outer diameter is 8.8mm, so it fits loosely in the hole. Kluson makes a 9.5mm outer bushing, and so, or outer diameter, excuse me, bushing. And so I ordered those to go with my Kluson branded tuners, and I'm going to ream the 9mm peg holes out to 9.5 or a little less, so that they fit kind of snug, and use the conversion bushings and then put the tuners in. The nice thing is that while the posts are not the same diameter, the screw holes line up pretty good. The screw holes in the back of the peg head line up pretty good, so you don't really have to re-drill holes and all that, and it should be a pretty much direct fit besides the bushings. And I'll show you why. Once I get the camera set up for actually watching me work and everything, I'll explain the differences and why I think that the no-name tuners that are Kluson lookalikes that come on these Fenders are garbage. So let me get set up for the shot and I'll get back with you. All right, we're back. Here we go. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to remove the factory tuners, and then I'll knock out the bushings, and along the way I'll show you the difference in what I'm talking about. I should clarify my statement earlier because I don't want to bag on Fender or get nailed for any kind of like disparaging whatever towards Fender. Their stuff is good, and they make a lot of great stuff too. I just think some of the corners that are cut on the Mexican level stuff in terms of the road worn stuff is a little frustrating to say the least. But it's also a sign of the times. I mean, you know, these days $1,000 is a middle of the road guitar, whereas, you know, when I was a kid, you know, 30 years ago, when I was a teenager that was walking through guitar shops drooling over guitars, it was let's see, when I first started playing, anyway, not irrelevant, but when I was like 13, 14, you know, in the mid 90s, you could totally get an American Standard. I think, don't quote me on this, but I know like Highway 1 was like $850 or something. Highway 1 might have been a little bit later, but I know an American Standard, it was about $1,000 to like $1,200, depending on what you got back then. Oddly enough, a lot of the Mexican stuff then was garbage, wasn't real good. The stuff now is much better, I have to say, but there's just a few things that, you know, kind of bother me, like the tuners. But I mean, a set of Kluson tuners is about $75, so, you know, you get name brand, the Fender good pickups in these guitars with full size pots and all that. So I guess that's where the trade-off is. And it's easy to swap the tuners, and they probably know that, so, you know, it's easy for them to save, you know, $50-$60 on a set of tuners. But without further ado, here we go. It's a really simple thing. You're just going to go in with your Phillips head, and you just work your way down, pull in. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 screws that you pull out, and once you get those screws out, it's pretty easy to get the tuners out. So I'm going to finish this. You know, there's no need for you to watch me do all 6 of them, and then I'll pull them out and I'll show you how to knock out the bushings. All right, and we're back. So check it out. In my right hand, right here, this is the Fender Kluson Style tuner. In my left hand, this is, sorry, it's coming into focus there. Probably can't see it very good. An actual Kluson Delux tuner. And oddly enough, they're made in Korea now. They're not made in the States anymore, but I mean, is anything made in the States anymore? But if you look and compare the two, the one on my left is the Kluson. It's got a 1/4 inch post diameter. The one on the right, the Fender no name one, is I think 3/8. Does that make sense? Anyway, they're actually, I should have got some calipers out and measured for you, but it's definitely smaller. And the other thing I have a problem with is this is the Fender, this post, I don't know if you can hear that, but it literally, it's like loosey-goosey in there. And I've had tuning stability issues with this guitar, and you usually do with strats, but with everything set up good and, you know, the string stretched out properly and the nut lubed and everything, it still kind of comes out of tune. And I think these tuners are the culprit. Or it could just be that I'm terrible at stringing up vintage tuners. I don't know. But this is, the Kluson one has almost no play. It's super tight, better tolerances and all that, which is to be expected. It's a much higher quality set of tuners. But anyway, so without further ado, I'm gonna show you how I knock the bushings out. I've done it a couple different ways. I screwed up this one right here. You may be able to see there's a little divot there because you can use a flathead, but I would caution you not to, because you'll dimple the bushings, and sometimes if you slip like I did, you will dimple the side of your headstock and you could damage the hole. I'm going to ream these out, so I'm not super concerned about it, and the bushing and the tuner hide it, but you could definitely jack up your nice guitar doing that. So what I like to do is take something like an Allen key. This one's got a little socket on the top that fits almost all the way in the hole, and that way you're less likely to ding the the edges. Ideally what you do is you get a tool from like StewMac or somewhere that's actually made for knocking these out. They do make them. I just don't have one, and you know, I don't do this that often. I only work on my own guitars. So I'm going to use this tool here, and sometimes you can just press it. If you kind of just go around the edge, you can just press it out, and bam, there it comes out. You just got to be careful, and you got to, I kind of stress that when you do this, you're super gentle, because again, you can really jack, especially if you're working on like a Les Paul or some kind of guitar like that that's got 3 on the side where there's a veneer on the headstock. I've absolutely, when I was younger, I had this Les Paul copy that was a bolt-on neck that had a veneered headstock, and it was like a Mylar veneer or something. And I absolutely was getting buck wild trying to get tuner bushings out, and I cracked the veneer and the headstock veneer. It looked terrible. But anyway, so here's what I was talking about. Let me flip the guitar over and I'll show you what I was talking about with the bushings. So this is your stock Kluson. It's out of the shot here. Whoop, there we go. I messed up my shot, sorry. And it just drops right in there and it's loose, right? And again, that's because the outer diameter, this is the stock Fender, when the outer diameter on this one's 9 millimeters, the outer diameter on this one is 8.8 millimeters. The other thing is that, again, as I mentioned earlier, because my first thought was I'll just use the stock bushings with the Klusons, but you can't, because again, the Klusons are actually a larger post, and it fits through the hole just fine. It's just you got to have the right bushings. So I'm gonna knock the rest of these bushings out and get set up to do some reaming, and we'll film that. And I'm super nervous about filming that. I don't want to jack my guitar up, but I'm yeah, gonna have to do it, just because again, I've got to get this thing to where it needs to be. So all right, later. All right, and we're back. So I got all the bushings out. I am set up here to do the reaming on the peg head. I watched a couple videos on this. Of course, the StewMac video says that this reamer is not the same as the reamer that they sell, and they're right. The one they sell is probably 40 times as expensive. This is a reamer that I got at Harbor Freight. It was like $3. It says it does from 1/8 all the way up to 1/2 inch. If I did this stuff all the time, if I was working on other people's guitars other than my own, I would probably get the super duper expensive high speed StewMac stuff. I've seen guys do this with a drill. I don't recommend, unless you have a drill press, that you do it with a drill, because I've done it with a drill before and it does not work out well at all. Anyway, I've also seen a video where a guy talked about the tuner holes being tapered. So tuner holes are tapered on like a violin or something like that that's got friction posts. I don't think these are tapered, but they might be. I don't know for sure. But anyway, without further ado, if you look at the holes in my 9.5 millimeter outer diameter bushings, right? When I say that, I'm talking about the outer diameter of this, not the inner, right? Words mean things, but anyway, they are not far off. So I'm not gonna go crazy with this. I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna turn this thing very carefully, because the other thing I don't want to do is I don't want to go so crazy that I wind up with it's bigger on one side than the other or something like that. So I watched another guy do this and it worked out pretty well. This is not the greatest reamer, so I don't know how well we're going to do, but again, we're trying to go up like 0.5 millimeters or something, and I've made about 4 turns, 5 turns. gonna stop and pull it out. I don't know that this is gonna work very well. Oh, not there yet. It seems to be taking some material away, and this thing is pretty sharp. It's not super sharp, but it's decent. It will probably get the job done. I probably should have bought a higher quality one, but again, this is, oh, see, you don't want to do what I just did there, where you push it to one side or the other. You want it sitting flush in the hole. And I could probably push harder, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to let the tool do the work. And I'm going to go slow, take my time, because again, if you go too far, then what you're going to wind up with is another sloppy hole. And nobody likes a sloppy hole. Nope, not there yet. If I was smart, I would be counting how many turns it takes to get this done, and then that way I would know how many I needed to make on all of them, but I'm not doing that. Alright, that feels like it's gotten a little bigger. Nope. Boy, we're slow going. Well, I'm gonna go till I get one done, and then I'm gonna let you guys get back to your lives, because it's gonna take a while to do all of these for sure. The other problem I may have from this is I'm wondering if I'm going to wind up with a tapered hole that doesn't work, because as I look at this, that's not a tapered bushing, I don't think. At least I can't tell from my eye. They might be slightly tapered. So if that happens, where, and I'm quite certain it's going to, what you would want to do is you'll do the top and get it to where the bushing would drop in, right? And then push the bushing in as far as you can, and then that'll tell you, right? Because it's going to obviously be more narrow at the bottom than the top. And so what I'll have to do is I'll have to flip it over and ream from the other side till it drops all the way in. Hope that makes sense. We're gonna I tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a break and get this going. Obviously, you can see from how I've done this what I'm doing, and if I wind up having to flip it over and ream from the back side, then I'll show that too. But anyway, I'll be back in a bit. Alright, what's up everybody? I'm back. So I've gotten 5 of these reamed and dropped down in there. I wanted to show you what I was talking about earlier, where there's some debate. Well, I shouldn't say debate. There was a guy out there that was saying that these peg heads are tapered. The holes are tapered. That might be true. I don't know. I don't think they are, because as I look at that, it's hard to tell on camera, especially with just my phone camera. I don't think they're tapered, but I will say, when you look at angled reamer, you put it in there, you make the turns, right? And then what happens, like I said earlier, is you drop it in there, and it only goes halfway. Now, currently the peg head hole is tapered, but that's because we were using a tapered reamer, so in the center of that hole is still the original size, because this gets slimmer as it goes down. So like I said, what you got to do is you flip your headstock over, and then you ream from the back. And what that's doing is you're bringing that other side of the peg head hole back to the same size as the front. So then your tuner, and I've got just some 320 Probably should use 4 or 600, but 320 seems to be fine. Kind of wadded up, rolled up, and I stick it in the hole and waller it around, and what that does is cleans the edges up pretty good. We'll do the same thing on the front again. And let's see if we can get this bushing to drop down in there. Let's clean the bench up here. I'm working on getting a setup in my garage to do this, because currently I'm about 8 inches from my bazillion-dollar MacBook Pro and my audio interface and all that equipment, which is less than ideal. But yeah, see, we're still not. If you can get it pressed down in there with your hand, that's usually pretty good, because you do want them to not waller around and move in there, but that's still too tight. So we're gonna finish it out. So I'm gonna finish reaming this out, and then I'll show you how I press them in, and then from there we'll put the new tuners in and call it a day. All right, here we go. I think we're good enough now. Let's slide this forward a little bit. All right, so drop it in there. You ought to be able to take your thumb and just push it down and seat it. That one's pretty good. Now what I do, and I'm gonna say this with a caveat, that when you do this, you have to be very careful. You can't go crazy with this, because you could wind up breaking stuff. It's everything else. But with the neck supported, right, I take my hand and I grab the headstock like this, and I'm using I got this one in Japan. It's, I guess you call it a fretting hammer. It's not really a fretting hammer. I got this at a hardware store in Japan, but it's soft, right? I mean, it's a mallet and it's hard, but it's soft enough that, like, you're not going to leave tool marks all over the bushings. And I'll take it and just give it a few taps to make sure that it is seated flat in that hole. And that'll do her. All right. And then we're going to flip them over, and we're all set up now. So what we can do is, and I got to get the right one, you start with the one that's got the little tang on it facing to the left, and you just start dropping these guys in. Now they're not, sometimes, yeah, these are all the same height. Sometimes you get tuners and they're staggered heights. These are vintage style, so that's not the case. But we will start dropping these fellas all in. And then I'll screw them in, and she'll be ready to go. Put a new set of strings on there, go back and check everything out. Probably have to do a minor setup, because this is going to affect things a little bit here and there. Maybe not, we'll see. But once you get them all dropped down in there, some guys like to put one in, screw one in. I don't do that. I like to put them all in there, and then all my holes should line right up. Ooh, we might have run into a problem there. That drops. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm running into is that the mounting screws for the Kluson tuners are a smaller diameter than the ones that are for the Fender. So hold that thought for 1 second. This is not the end of the world. It's going to look a little goofy because the tuners, the screws, let's dump all this back in. Just going to use the factory screws. They're a little beefier. And they're a little faded, because the other thing is that the Kluson tuners were not relicked. Interesting. 7 screws. Guess they gave you an extra. The Kluson tuners were not, that it came with, were slightly relicked, not a whole lot. So it's going to look a little goofy because the screws are different colors, but you'll notice, you may not be able to see this, but that's the one on my right hand is the Fender screw, and the one on the left is the Kluson screw. It's funny that the Kluson shafts are bigger, but the screws are smaller. But anyway, so all I'm going to do, same process as taking them out. I'm going to put the screws back in. It really doesn't matter that you use different ones as long as they fit in the holes and sufficiently hold the tuners in place. Not a huge deal. I don't think these holes are, yeah, they're the same in terms of the holes through the actual tuner themselves, but yeah, okay, and that's catching fine, so we're all good there. Yep. So yeah, that's a done deal. We'll put these back in. I guess I can keep you guys on here a little longer. Probably heard the dogs barking in the background. The wife just got back from the store, which means soon it's going to be lunchtime. And it's probably going to be honeydew time as well because we're putting up Christmas decorations. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. We did. A lot to be thankful for this year. And anyway, so I want to finish this up and call it a day. Got my head off. Again, y'all bear with me with all this editing and stuff. I'm doing this with a cell phone and a tripod, and I'll eventually get better and better at editing. But anyway, hope you learned something. I did. This was fun. Actually, it was kind of a pain in the neck, but it hopefully will improve the playability and tuner stability of my Fender Strat here. And once it's all said and done, I'll do a video. I got another video coming with the same guitar because I'm going from the factory 9s to 10s, which means I'm going to likely have to file out the nut slots a little bit. So if I have to do that, I'll put a video up of that. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.